Good morning, everyone. I'm Dr. Harpreet Bhatia from Keshav Mahavidyalaya. I'm going to be talking to you about innovative pedagogy. Let me just share my screen with you. Just give me a minute. I hope all of you can see this, my presentation. Okay, so let's start with the entire topic. What exactly do we understand by the term pedagogy, innovative pedagogy? So in innovative pedagogy, there are certain elements. One of them is a blended learning. The other element is what we call as HOTS, or the higher order thinking skills. The third area which we will be referring to is skills and competencies. And the fourth area, which is we will have naturally as teachers, we all know that the assessments have a very important role to play. So starting with the first component, that is blended learning, what exactly does it mean? What do we understand by this term blended learning? So when we try to look at what exactly blended learning is, it is sometimes also referred to as hybrid learning, because it's a combination of the classroom learning and as well as the online learning. The student is in control of what he or she wants to learn, where he wants to learn, and when he wants to learn. So basically the student is fairly in control of the pace of his or her learning. Another important aspect of blended learning is that it is collaborative in nature. That is, the student and the teacher are working together. It's not just the prerogative of the teacher that she has to feed information to the student, but it is also student's responsibility to be a part of that learning process. So naturally, when the student himself is a part of the learning process, he or she is more engaged in the entire process than he would have been in the traditional mode. In the traditional mode, you might find it very difficult to keep the students engaged for long periods of time. They are not listening, or they are doing other things in the classroom. But in this new or the innovative pedagogy that we are referring to right now, the term that we are right now understanding, blended learning, is you will find that the students are far more engaged. They are more interested in the learning process. So now the question that comes to all of us is, what's so new about using online resources for teaching? We have been doing that for a while. We tell students to look up material online also. So how is this different from our traditional form of learning? And the other question that comes to our mind is teaching something that will replace classroom teaching? This online teaching will take away our role as teachers? Let's understand if that is so. So blended learning, actually, we cannot consider it so much as something which has come up very recently, or it's a new thing or an innovation. It's basically, you can also call it as a byproduct of the digital era that surrounds us today. And the resources of outside, that is e-learning, and those within the classroom are brought in together. There is a mixture of both these things, and that combined uh, the product of classroom teaching as well as e-learning is what we call as the blended learning. So now let's look at the components of blending learning. So as you can see in this figure, the first and foremost component is face-to-face training. I don't think anything can take away the role of face-to-face training. So there is face-to-face training. We have virtual classrooms, webinars. We send links to the students that you can look up this material. Then we have various simulated events that we can help for the student to understand the situation better. Then we have assessment, and most importantly, one-to-one coaching. That is, we cater to every student's ability to learn and the method in which the child learns the best. There are different models of blended learning, And we can use the different models depending upon the need of that particular time. The first and foremost one is the rotation model, where you have the station rotation or lab rotation blended learning, in which you have three different stations. One is the teacher-led instruction, and the other one is computer-based instruction, and the third one is the collaborative activities that the students are doing together in order to learn some new material. I don't think this is anything new as far as teaching is concerned, because this is a method which is quite frequently used in nursery classes. The teacher divides the class in three different groups, and each group is given a different activity. And sometimes when there are there are other teachers along with there are more than one teacher in the classroom, they look after the different stations. But here we are bringing it to the senior classes as well. The other method is that of flex blended learning, in which the although the student is doing offline activities, but it is mostly done in the school setting itself. That is, the students are all in the college or the institute where they are working, but there they will work on the computer. That is, online work is being done, but it is being done in the institute, and the teacher is there, and she provides help, and also supervises their work to see how the students are doing. So you can use small groups over there, you can use group projects, you can also use individual tutoring in this model. The third one is enriched virtual blended learning. Here the role of the teacher is the minimal. That is, the student himself decides what he wants to learn and where he wants to learn. It's only when he gets stuck somewhere or he wants information or guidance from the teacher that he takes the help of the teacher. Otherwise, most of the learning is being done by the student himself. The fourth one is the flipped classroom. This is probably one of the easiest to follow. And I think some of us are already doing this method, because here what we are doing is, instead of in the traditional classroom, we have the teacher telling what is to be done. The entire lesson is taught in the class, and the students are expected to do homework outside the classroom. That may or may not be online. But in the flipped classrooms, the student has already been familiarized with the material that is going to be discussed in class. And in the class, you are only going to be discussing the material that the student has already done outside the classroom, or you would do other aspects with the students to enhance their information. You can have online tutorials, you can have projects, you can also have a quiz and multi-choice questions on their laptops, which the students can work on. The fifth one is the mastery-based blended learning. This is quite similar to the enriched virtual learning, because here also the student rotates through the different stations, but the schedule is totally individualized to each student. So the student works at his or her own pace and rotates the activities only as and when he or she has completed the previous task. Self-directed blended learning is, again, which is self-directed, and as the name suggests, and the student decides on his own whether he or she has been able to master a particular aspect and then moves on. But here there is a little bit of a challenge for the teacher, because teacher and student may not agree that the student has mastered that particular concept. So the teacher has to be skilled enough to be able to give the feedback without de-authenticating the efforts of the student. The outside in blended learning is when you start with the non-academic aspect of your learning outside the classroom and bring that learned information into your classroom and finish it with a kind of a theoretical base that you would like to give to the student. So here you require a lot of creativity. The students have to be motivated enough to collaborate, and it's important how, as teachers, we give a feedback to the students to help them to grow. So here we can see the different models. I have covered most of them. One which I did not talk about so far is the project-based learning model. Here the teacher can give a project to the student, in which case the student will get the opportunity to find out as much information as possible for that particular topic on which the student is making the project. So let's look at the advantages and disadvantages of the traditional method and the e-learning method. So in the traditional method, we know there is knowledge exchange, there is skill development, interaction between the learner and the teacher is quite a lot. There is socialization in the sense of with the other students in the classroom. Immediate feedback is there from the teacher. The teacher is also able to motivate the students to learn further, and the students become familiar with the teachers and have a kind of a rapport, and the teachers also build a kind of a rapport with the students. The teachers are also able to assess what are the positive and the limitations of the particular student. So let's look at the advantages of e-learning. So the advantages of e-learning is lots and lots of knowledge sharing, not only just what you have to do in the class, but otherwise as well. Online information, as we all know, is endless. So there is a whole lot of information that the student can get. There is this entire information is at their fingertips, one press of the button, and the entire information is available to them at whatever time, whenever the person is free, whenever the person feels the need to look at some information. That information is easily accessible. Then naturally the cost of learning is less, because you don't have to have an institute where the students will need to come. All of it is online learning, so naturally it's cost effective. Naturally the student also doesn't have to pay that much of fees if they don't have to come to an institute. Then global audience is there. You can showcase your work to the entire world if you wish to. You can put anything on YouTube and the whole world will see it. Unlimited knowledge, access to knowledge, I have already already addressed. And helpful for instructors, we will see that in the next slide, how it is helpful for instructors. Look at the disadvantages. The classroom size is very limiting. That is, if we don't have large enough classrooms, we cannot accommodate very large number of students. So the number of students is very limited. Whereas if you have the e-learning method, you can have as many students as wish to join in. The student teacher ratio in the traditional method has to be taken into account. The accessibility to the information, it is expensive to deliver for both the institute as well as the student. It is more instructor centered, that is the teacher decides what the student should learn and when the student should learn that. Time and location constraints are also there. We know these days it's become very, very difficult to travel from one place to another. So it is much easier to do it online than for the person to be physically present in any institute. So let's look at the disadvantages of e-learning. That also has its disadvantages. Costly to produce, because you need all kinds of infrastructure to be able to deliver online classes. New skills are needed for everybody, the teachers as well as the students, to be able to understand, to be able to make sense of the information that is being provided to them online. Affordability, not all students are able to afford laptops for them to be able to access information on a e-platform. Then this is one of the major aspects, I feel, that there is hardly any social interaction. They don't meet the other students, they don't even meet the teacher. So the social interaction is very, very little, and that can work actually in a detrimental way, because that is one way of the student learning social skills. And yes, there is feedback is not always immediate. If we make, of course, we make self-assessment quiz, then the student can get the feedback immediately. But otherwise, the feedback is not as fast as that in the traditional mode. So as I was saying, that this e-learning method also has some advantages for for the teachers as well. So let's look at the advantages. The students are eager to learn because they are collaboratively learning the information. The information that we are able to provide to the students is much better and much wider. You can spend extended time with the student. You can, on a one-to-one basis, you can have discussions online with the student. There's individualized professional development plans. Each student learns at his or her own pace. There is a new option to teach at home, so the student doesn't really have to travel. Neither does the teacher have to travel to reach the institute to be able to teach the students. The uh, Even those students who are difficult to reach, we are all familiar with and have experienced the traditional classrooms, and we know that there are some students who are on the higher end of the spectrum, and there are some who are on the lower end of the spectrum. So we as teachers have to teach somewhere in the middle, so that the information is given to both the students who are able to understand quickly, and those students who are taking a little bit more time to understand that material. But here we can give the information to the student at the pace at which the student can learn. So you can divide the classroom into groups depending upon their capacity to understand concepts that you are giving to them. So you can teach at that particular level which the students of that particular group can understand. So that way it becomes far more easy for the teacher also to plan the lessons. Even those students who are very, very good sometimes want more deeper information, which again is possible when we teach online. The entire learning, as we can see in blended learning, is totally student centric. That is, the entire program is designed to fit the needs and the requirements of the student. So let's see how we can start the blended learning process, because for all of us probably this is something which is new, and we've had to do it because of the pandemic. Before this, I don't think any of us thought also of online teaching. So let's see how we can do it to start the blended learning process. I think it's very important that we start very small. We take it in bits. Not only for us, it's important because it is something that is new for us, but also for the students, it's a new platform. So starting small is helpful to both the student as well as the teacher. It's very important to not lose patience because we are trying out something new. So yes, it can be sometimes a very frustrating experience. So we need to ensure that we don't lose our motivation and patience in the process. We should not be using technology as just as an add-on to our lectures. We actually use technology in ways that is going to be beneficial to the student as well as to the teacher. And online discussions are something that will give you a lot of information about the students, and also about the ability for the student to absorb information. Because when you are discussing things with the students on an online basis, each student is being spoken with directly. When we make small groups, we have a few students to deal with at a time, so that the online discussions is not something that we should do away with. If we decide that okay, we are going to use the same method that we were using offline, of showing a presentation and expecting the students to listen to you for the full 1 hour, and then after that ask them questions related to the presentation that we have just shown, it will not help, because it will not keep the students engaged for 1 hour online. It's a very difficult for the student also to maintain their attention for that longer period online. And of course, it goes without saying that we ourselves need to have updated information about the different areas or which are available, what are the sites, what are the links that you can give to the students so that they are able to get further information on the aspects that we are discussing. So basically, when we talk of, you can also look at these. So basically, when we are talking of blended learning, it has three main components. One is the face-to-face active learning. The second is digital learning. And the third one is structured independence for the student to be able to learn as and when they wish to. And when they feel that they have sort of mastered a component, then it is their freedom to go on to move on to the next one. So with this, we come to the end of this topic. I will pick up the other topics one by one. Thank you.